Hello. Welcome to this episode of a Creative Approach podcast. I'm your host, Karen Poirier-Brody. Thank you for joining us. Do not forget to visit the website www.acreativeapproachpodcast.com, where you will be able to access show notes from today's episode and our past programs. We have a Facebook page too, and a Facebook group page where your comments are welcome. I also want to take this opportunity to thank my Patreon members for their support. I'm really excited about my guest, but first, a bit of a teaser. I recently spent a month in the United Kingdom and Ireland. I love to travel, and that recent visit was an incredible trip. An interesting aside, I was not quite prepared, even though I'd heard of it, for the breathtaking green quality of Ireland. So much in that part of the world is beautiful. Also, the magic and mystery of prehistory, the beauty and the sadness of the ancient stories, and the tragedies and joys of current events are educational, heartbreaking, and inspirational. I met many delightful people in the countries I visited and with whom I traveled. So I'm planning a podcast just to talk about that trip and the inspiration it has given to my creative approach. So stay tuned for future episodes. My guest today is no stranger to the podcast world. For over a year, Christy Stickler and I were two of the co-hosts of a Digi-Scrap Geek podcast, a show which is on hiatus, but still available on iTunes. My friend and scrapbook colleague, Christy, has been enjoying the Expat lifestyle since 2006 and currently resides in Abu Dhabi, the United Arab Emirates, with her husband, son, and her cats. Christy and I share many passions, including travel. We are both on the creative team at Get It Scrapped. Christy creates with hybrid scrapbooking, telling her story with a blend of digital and paper approaches. She also enjoys art journaling and mixed media art. When she's not scrapbooking or creating, you can find her spending time with her family, homeschooling her son, or playing video games. Welcome to this episode where Christy shares with us her creative approach. Hello, everyone, and welcome to this episode of a Creative Approach podcast. I have as a guest today someone I'm very excited to have with me, and that's Christy Stickler, because Christy and I, as far as podcasting, have a podcast history. We go back to the Digi-Scrap Geek show, where we were co-hosts with Carrie Eric and Summer Christensen, and what a fun team, and it was fun to talk about digital scrapbooking, and I do miss that show, though I'm having a lot of fun with this one, and I'm so happy to have Christy here, and some of you may be former listeners of the Digi-Scrap Geek show and are familiar with Christy, but I'm sure there's lots of new listeners who you will love to hear Christy's story. It's always so much fun to talk to her. We're Antipodean, I guess is what you'd call it, wouldn't you? Know, you have to bore through the earth to get a direct connection between the two of us right now. Although, of course, we're going the airways arching over the earth. But basically, Christy is on the opposite side of the world in one of the United Arab Emirates, Abu Dhabi. And that's a lot of fun. And one of these days, I'm going to go there and visit her, because one of the things, in spite of a couple of years of working together, both on the podcast and through Get It Scrapped, we have never actually met in person. That my previous podcast co-hosts, I have never met any of them in actual face-to-face. It's all been internet friendships. So that's an interesting thing. Nonetheless, I feel like Christy's a really good friend. So welcome, Christy.
Thank you.
From the
How
other
are
side of the
you?
world. I am not actually so great. People may notice that in my voice. I had this wonderful trip for a month over in the United Kingdom and Ireland, and I got sick over there and came back and thought, that I'd gotten near death. I was really bad with a cough and nasty, nasty voice and laryngitis and everything. And I'm recovering. So I'm doing quite well right now. But yeah. And how about you? How are you doing?
I'm doing pretty good. A little sleepy. It's morning, and I'm on my second cup of coffee.
Well, that's good. I'm not tired yet, but I'm sure I will be, because this is the first day that I've actually felt fairly human. And I packed way too much into my day, but I'm
That's
sure it'll
always the
catch up
way.
with me eventually here. But at any rate, so I've talked a little bit about some of our past history, but it might be fun for people to know just what sort of creative endeavors and things that you're up to right now. So maybe we could just go into those. I mean, you have a few things
Sure.
going on, so you can start with whatever you want to talk about here and tell us about your current projects.
Well, I'm trying to extend outward a little bit from scrapbooking. I've really started doing a lot of art journaling. It's hybrid art journaling and a lot of recycled materials. I've joined in a couple of collaborative projects, one of them with Jana Oliveira of With Two Worlds, and it's called Dual Imaginations, the idea being, her perspective and my perspective, because she does paper style art journaling, but she also does a lot of digital. So we're kind of bringing both of that together, showing you a couple of ways in which you can be creative with art journaling. And then the other collaboration is the Sustainable Souls Project, and Tina Walker does that one. Its goal is to talk about different environmental issues that we're facing, but to do so with art and to just try to kind of bring awareness to those things. So it's kind of fun, we get to challenge ourselves to do some kind of recycled crafting. And, you can do anything, mixed media, art journaling, whatever, but it also has a message behind it. I'm still with Get It Scrapped.
Before we get back to Get It Scrapped, I'm very intrigued about the environmental perspective because, right now I have a real passion for sustainability and have gone to some sustainability conferences. In fact, there's one going on right now in Hawaii that I'm doing virtually, although today I was a little crazy and didn't get to the recordings, but it's all recorded. And I will go and take a listen to some of the things going on there. But the whole idea of using the recycled materials and using digital scrapbooking and paper scrapbooking and talking about these issues, that sounds really intriguing. And I've been away and running around, and I definitely have to go and see what you and Tina are up to. That one sounds really intriguing.
She started a blog. I'll give you the link to it. And whenever people do the project, this month they did carbon footprints. I missed that one because I've been a little bit busy, but they have a topic each month. We've done ice melting. We've done and now I'm drawing a blank. But,
it's okay. We'll put the link in the show notes and people can reference that. But that sounds really cool. Yeah, there's a group too. I have to sign up for that if I'm feeling well enough, and I'll have to look at how strenuous this hike is. But there's a Women's Environmental Network in the Bay Area that I've taken part in some events with. So like I said, I'm trying to focus on some of that in my life. We're very parallel. That's why we're good friends, because we like a lot of the same things and have a lot of the same interests. And then before we get to Get It Scrapped again, one thing, Jana is involved in Get It Scrapped too, but let's get back to your scrapbooking or your journaling with Jana. What are the kind of topics that you're just using to do your journaling with her?
It's just kind of whatever we're in the mood for. So our first one, we started off with mermaids. And, she was just inspired to draw a mermaid. So she actually created some digital elements. Jana does some amazing drawings, and she shared the kit for free.
Oh, great.
And she took a turn with it, and then I took a turn with mermaids. And then now I have this whole mermaid journal that I'm going to keep.
Oh, that sounds fantastic.
Yeah. Our second one we're talking about doing, and I'm sort of working on it, is angels. And I'm learning how to digitize my own drawings and to try to find a way to share those. Eventually, maybe someday, I'll be selling my own digital scrapbook kit elements. So this is a wonderful vehicle for me to practice.
That sounds
and
great.
Learn to draw an art journal.
I saw some of your flowers you did recently I'm not sure if that was Get It Scrapped on Facebook, on your blog. I'm not sure where that was. But anyways, one of these sites where we can find Christy, which of course we will list in the show notes. But they looked lovely, and it was a lovely approach to flowers. I really like that. And so moving on to the things that you're doing besides which, do you have time for everything? But of course, Get It Scrapped. Why don't you talk about that a little bit?
I do a couple of layouts a month for Get It Scrapped, which I'm kind of grateful for, and also with Simple Scrapper, because I haven't been doing as much scrapbooking as usual. I've been sort of drawn into fiber arts and painting and art journaling. So it's kind of nice to have the design teams at Get It Scrapped and Simple Scrapper so that I keep wanting to make those scrapbook pages, because otherwise I have way too many creative projects, and without a little accountability, I don't always finish projects.
Now, I know we talked about digital scrapbooking, or about scrapbooking in general, a bit when Cheryl Ashcraft was a guest on this show, but I'm thinking there may be people who are listening to us and who have a vague idea about scrapbooking being about pasting pictures and some pretty elements into a page, but don't really understand it. So maybe we should describe scrapbooking and tell them a little bit about what Get It Scrapped, the site is, and what Simple Scrapper is.
Okay, so Get It Scrapped, the focus is on scrapbooking design. She also has elements that help you tell your story a little more clearly. So it's like making a photo album, but it's a designed photo album. It has elements of art to it. You learn about the symbolism behind colors and motifs. You learn how to place those appropriately on the page to tell a very detailed story. It's where I've learned a lot of my design from, and I've actually been able to take a lot of what I've learned at Get It Scrapped and put it into my art journaling. So if you're wanting to learn page design, it's a great place to go for that.
I agree.
Simple Scrapper is more about getting the stories out and doing so. Like when she says simple scrapping, it's not necessarily making a simple plain scrapbook page. It's more about simplifying your process and the way that you store your materials and thinking about those types of things so that you get more done and so that you tell deeper stories that you weren't thinking about. And that's probably the thing that I love about both Simple Scrapper and Get It Scrapped is a lot of times I would have the tendency of just putting who, what, where, when, and why in my scrapbook page. You know, this is my son's birthday or something like that. But when I start doing some of these prompts from Simple Scrapper and Get It Scrapped, I start telling deeper stories, more intense stories within the stories of the photos. For example, I had this layout that I just shared on my blog recently of my son with an Easter basket. And of course, that could have been the photo album page right there. But my dog is sitting patiently watching him with the chocolate, waiting to see if he's going to share with him. And of course, my son didn't, because chocolate isn't safe for a dog. But I was able to tell the story of the relationship that my son had with our family dog by kind of using one of those prompts to pull a deeper story out of the page.
Exactly. And you could tell why I always like talking to Christy, because she sums up all of these ideas very well and succinctly and pulls us all into the story, which is great. Christy is a great storyteller. And so those two projects, and then you said you're doing fiber art. Let's see here. And
yeah, I do. Well, I should mention O Scraps at the end of the scrapbooking one too. I've done some hybrid work for O Scraps on their blog. I do about a post a month, maybe two, with some tutorials for hybrid scrapbooking and inspiration. And then I've been wanting to learn to crochet for like probably 4 or 5 years now. And I kept saying I was going to do it. And I saw a local ladies meetup, and it's really close to my house. It's like 10 minutes from my house. So I went, and I'm learning to crochet amigurumi cacti this week. And it's just kind of, I think I've talked about accountability before in your creativity. If you have a group of ladies, or there could be gentlemen in it too, if you have people that like the things that you like to do, you are probably more likely to stick with whatever you're wanting to try. And being able to go and meet with them and have a coffee for about an hour, hour and a half every week means I'm more willing to keep going with the crochet, keep going and trying new things.
Well, that's true. I mean, I think I get stuck in making scarves all the time and knitting. I do some socks, but I think that's where I'm a bit stuck. I took it along. I was knitting a bit on my trip, but when you're with a bunch of people and they're showing you a neat stitch or they have a great pattern, it's a great inspiration. Well, kind of like going to the scrapbook sites and getting these prompts and pushing yourself just a little bit to get more into the hobby and the area of creativity that inspires you. That's cool, though. I really like that you're getting into that kind of thing. That really sounds like a lot of fun.
I think it'll be fun, and since I taxi a lot of places, it'll be easy to take with me because my scrapbooking isn't exactly portable.
Yeah, well, you can't really walk around too much at this time of year where you live anyway. So it's kind of like we have Emirates weather here right now.
Well, we hit 50 this week, 50 Celsius.
Uh-huh.
And with the humidity, they're saying we're hitting highs of 64. So we're like 120 and up. Right now, really hot. So yeah, we're not outside a whole lot.
Yeah, we're not quite there, but I think today was like maybe only 104 Fahrenheit. And well, this evening felt a bit humid, but normally it's been really dry. It usually is, but I think tomorrow is 109, 110. So we're bracing.
It gets warm, yeah.
So
it gets getting warm.
But you get a lot of that, so you're not going to be out walking around anywhere. So having something to do in the taxi's good.
It's only about 2 or 3 months out of the year. Well, maybe about 4 months out of the year, and then the rest of the year we're in the 70s. So
yeah,
I'll take a couple hot months.
Sure, and everything is kind of geared that way where you live, anyway.
Oh yeah.
Christy I envy her. She has a grocery store in her apartment building.
Yeah, we have a whole mall.
Yes.
Go downstairs, and I can actually go for a whole city block indoors without having to go outside. So we've got
lovely.
Grocery, pharmacy, and art store. The main things.
Well, in Montreal we had, and they still have, basically an underground city connected by the subway and apartment buildings and offices and everything are linked in there. So when you live in extreme climates, it really is the ideal way to survive.
Oh, yeah.
So now I think, you're doing a little fine art too. I mean, you certainly are finding time for all kinds of really cool pursuits, Christy.
Sort of finding time. It's funny, coming to you now because I am feeling a little burnt out this week. We just did a lot of our homeschool reporting for the end of the year. I registered my son with an online high school so that he can get an accredited diploma when he graduates in about a year or so. And we had to do all the reporting. And this was our first time, and we joined kind of late, so we were behind the game. And doing all of that and having all these deadlines, I just am kind of burnt out. It's like creatively I want to do stuff, but it's hard to sit and get going right now.
Well, you certainly have permission to take a little time off here. I'm sure you'll get into all of these things as time goes on. I've been traveling. A lot of stuff has been pushed to the side and then getting ill, and I'm not a good sick person, and that whole thing of wanting to do stuff and being busy and all of that. And I said, no, I'm sick. I cannot do it. It's just impossible. And sometimes you just have to acknowledge the fact that as much as we'd like to be Wonder Woman, we're not. Or Superwoman or whatever, that we just can't do it all. Now, Christy, I know a lot about you because I've known you a while, but I don't really know all of your story. And that's one thing we tend to do here on the show is find out a little bit about people. So I was wondering if you could maybe give us a short synopsis of your life, where you grew up, were you involved with a lot of creative people in your life, things like that?
Well, I grew up in South Florida in the West Palm Beach area. And then for college, I moved to Orlando, and I met my husband there. He works in the theme park industry. And at the time, He had just gotten out of the Air Force, but he kind of worked his way up through the theme park industry, kind of unexpected. And we moved with our son to the Bahamas in 2005, 2006. And we stayed there for 9 years. He worked for Atlantis Resort there for a while. And then we've moved here to Abu Dhabi for his job. He's opening the Warner Brothers Park here. And never expected that sort of thing because I was always very determined. I'm actually an environmental science and biology major, but having my son, I just kind of gravitated towards taking care of him and then later homeschooled him. So I didn't go into that field. My mother and my grandmother were both into more of the fiber arts. My mom did embroidery and my grandmother liked to knit and she did quilting. I didn't pick up either of those very well. I did a little bit embroidery at first. I just sort of kind of gravitated towards scrapbooking when my son was born because I think it was one of those hobbies that gave myself permission. It was practical, putting the photos into something nice for display. So there was a practical element to something that was creative, and I just really got into it. And it sort of led to other hobbies now, like the art journaling, and I'm rediscovering painting and stuff like that I experimented with in high school. And I guess that's kind of just everything in a nutshell. But
well, that's really cool. So you were more on a science bent when you went to college. Yeah. You didn't really do anything art-wise in your college days?
No, I wanted to be initially a biologist. Jane Goodall and Diane Fossey were my heroes growing up. And when I got into college, I thought I'm going to have to dedicate all my time. I did like a little bit of painting, and I used to do bead weaving, like on a loom. I used to weave jewelry in high school. And I was like, I can't afford any of the supplies anymore. I'm a college student. And I was at times working 2 jobs and going to school. So I gave up almost everything creative. I did a little embroidery, but for the most part, I was not doing anything creative for several years.
But you did have that creative spark that was going along.
Yeah.
It sounds like.
Yeah.
You weren't a totally science nerdy person.
No, but I had my focus. I did wildlife rehab for a while, volunteered at a wildlife refuge, and helped rehabilitate injured animals and get them back to where they belonged.
Oh, cool. See, that's something I definitely didn't know about you. That's really interesting. And, of course, fits with all of your environmental concerns. But, of course, we're all concerned about the environment these days, I think. Or at least the majority of us are, who do any thought at all about the subject. And so that's really cool. And then it's kind of nice that, now, obviously your son is still a focus with some homeschooling and things, which is, of course, when you're traveling and moving to different countries, a very, almost to some extent a necessity, unless you're going to send your kid away as far as school, I would imagine.
It just depends on your expat lifestyle and where you're moving to and what schools are available. We homeschooled even when we lived in Florida. I just liked the lifestyle. And I joke about it, it's kind of selfish for me in a way because I never had to get up and do the car lines in the mornings, and we could work it around my husband's schedule. Being in the theme park industry, a lot of the times when he's working is when everybody else is off. That's his busy season. So we're able to be right along with his schedule versus, my son's in school and then my husband gets time off and then we'd have to pull him out of school to go somewhere. We're just a little bit more flexible.
Yeah, for sure. As you said, it's your lifestyle, where you're living. There's a whole lot of things, and also your preference. But the one thing in all these things you're talking about, although, when you get the idea that people are Digi-Scrappers, that they might be a little bit geeky and nerdy, that you didn't talk about your great life as a techie gamer.
Oh, yeah. I sometimes don't think about that when we're talking about creative stuff. So I've played video games since I was a little kid, and that's actually one of the things that my husband and I both had in common when we both met. We kind of joke about it. I had a Sega and he had a Nintendo, so it was perfect for us to get together. We ended up with both the systems. And we've played together off and on throughout the years, and then now as he likes to build computers, mess around with computer parts, it's kind of his hobby. And he's been able to get each of us a gaming PC. My son and him just built a new one for my son. We just upgraded his with new parts, and we all sit and game together on cooperative style games, and like Heroes of the Storm and Overwatch and stuff like that.
Yeah, I mean, you have regular gaming chairs and you're all set up. You have the whole environment. And I think that's cool. It's a family activity that you share, though you may not always be playing the same game.
No, sometimes I sit and watch them. That's kind of an important thing for my creative space, is being able to be in the room so we can communicate when we're all playing together. But then when my husband is playing something, I can just kind of watch like a movie while I create.
That's great. I think that's a wonderful thing. But it's just an interesting thing about Christy that I thought the listeners might like to know. Well, in talking about creativity, one of the things I ask people often is just if you have any general thoughts about creativity and about the part that creativity plays in people's lives, if you had any thoughts or things you wanted to share with the audience.
It has become for us quite a bit of stress relief, even for my son. So we try to work art into our everyday school day, even if we can just do like 15 minutes or a half hour of something, at least several days a week. He just performs better in school, and I'm more relaxed for those times when he needs me to tutor him. You know, as he's getting older, he's doing more of the work on his own, but when you're sitting there, you know, looking at a computer screen doing math or other things, you can kind of get a little cranky if that's all you're doing. So the art just kind of, you know, being creative, doing something creative just kind of gives us a nice release. And I guess I feel more productive too when I'm sitting and doing something. You know, if I'm sitting in front of the TV and I'm crocheting or doodling on something, I feel a little more productive about my binge watching session.
I can get that. You have something to show for what the time you're putting in. Although it's good for the mind. It stretches the mind to play games and do puzzles and things. So that's cool. And I think that's a really good point of that sense of renewal that you can have from some of the creative pursuits that you make a part of your routine. That can really be helpful to the other daily humdrum of your life.
And I think, too, it's good if you have a kid and you can explore some creative endeavors with them. They're still, you know, especially as a teenager, kind of finding their way. And I meet some of these adults and they have no other hobbies. They just go to work and they come home and they don't do a whole lot else. And there comes a point in their life where work will go away. You know, they retire and they don't always know what to do with themselves. So I think early on, if you can start to cultivate with the kid a desire to try more new things and develop hobbies, I think once they start getting a little bit older, they have I guess, for lack of a better word, a more fulfilled feeling as an adult.
And a certain flexibility.
Yeah, that would be a good way of saying it.
Yeah, I think that's very true. Well, you know, one of the things we didn't discuss, we talked about some of the places where people could find you, and then we'll have links, but you have a blog.
Yeah, I do.
And so we should probably mention that. Of course, it'll be in the show notes.
myscrapbookevolution.com.
And there we can find you pretty regularly?
Pretty regularly. All the links to my social media are there. I regularly use Pinterest. I'm on Instagram. I use my Facebook page a little bit, but Pinterest is my go-to place. You'll probably be able to tell what I'm working on by the majority of the pins that go through.
Yeah, isn't it funny?
You'll have an idea. Yeah.
How we have our sort of main go-to social media place, which of course you have to. You can't be as involved in all of them all the time.
No.
And so, yeah, I think for me it's Facebook, but every now and then I get kind of pulled over to Pinterest or Instagram or one of the others. But yeah, so for you it's Pinterest. But if we go to myscrapbookevolution.com, we can find you and all those social media links. That's really cool. Well, we'll put all of that information, of course, in the show notes. And I hope that everyone has had as much fun as I have with this conversation with Christy and finding out more about her life. And I want to thank you so much for joining me.
Well, thank you for having me. It's been too long since we've talked like this.
I think that's very true. And who knows, maybe we'll get together on a Digi-Scrap podcast in the future. You never know.
You never know. But
yes, it's really been fun talking with you. Thanks once again, and thanks to the listeners for joining us in this conversation. Thanks so much for listening to a Creative Approach podcast. I hope you'll subscribe to the podcast on iTunes or Stitcher if you've not already done so. Please check out a Creative Approach podcast Facebook page where I keep you up to date on our latest episodes. I'd love you to become a member of the Creative Approach podcast Facebook group where you can share your thoughts and where you'll discover additional news posted. Also, check out the podcast website, www.acreativeapproachpodcast.com. My team and I are working on developing a great home for fans of the show. At the site, you'll find a resources tab where some of my favorite products are listed. I may receive some income from affiliate memberships from these products. Be assured that these are brands and products I use and enjoy. If Christy's story inspired you to experiment with scrapbooking your story, you might want to check out scrapbook.com. This affiliate site has supplies, instruction, and inspiration to guide you in telling your story in a meaningful and fun fashion. Also, the Creative Approach podcast website also features a Patreon page tab for those who wish to offer some monetary support for the program. I'll talk to you again with another interesting guest or stories of my adventures and travels on the next episode, and sign off now with best wishes in your creative approach to life.